shots over in Cathedral Hall. So welcome to Harry's third session on fathers and sons, and he's going to tell us about the Ruysdael family. So a couple of housekeeping things. Please silence your cell phones so that there aren't any unnecessary noises and buzzings that gets picked up by the electronic system. And when you want to ask a question, please wait for the mic because we want to get everything recorded that Ed gets set up for us. And when you talk into the microphone as if you're eating an ice cream cone. It's a little off-putting because you hear yourself echoing and people think they have to talk down here, but no, keep it close to your mouth. And Harry, please take it over.
Okay, thank you very much, Kathleen, and everybody. For here we are somewhat diminished, but I think people will straggle in and out. I will be promised to be through a little before 12, so those of you who have need shots can get going. Okay, now today is a different kind of combination of fathers and sons, and I put uncles in here too because the man that you see on the board is Solomon von Ruysdael, and he does some remarkably wonderful paintings interpreting the phenomenon of the Dutch landscape in ways that hadn't been done before. He's mainly in the 1640s, but he's certainly a pioneer in the naturalistic landscapes that are the hallmark of Dutch painters at that time. It was led, however, by his nephew, Jacob van Ruysdael, 1629 to 82, so he again doesn't live that long. But note the spellings, like you can't see it here, but there's an interesting, he changed the spelling from R-U-Y-S to R-U-I-S. And his father and his uncle, I'll go on to the next picture here. His father and his uncle had a different last name altogether. Their name was de Goyer. His father was a man named Isaac de Goyer, who later changed the name to Ruysdael after the country estate near where they lived. And Bruegel did a little bit the same thing, I guess, as I told you last week. There are very few of the father Isaac's paintings, and there's one right here. I mean, this may not even be, but this is most likely Isaac van Ruysdael right here, who does this view of the Egmond al Zee, which is in a museum in the Netherlands. So Jacob is the pupil of his father, who's an artist and a frame maker, but not at the stature that his uncle or Isaac's brother would reach. It's really hard to determine the influence of Isaac's influence on his son's art because we find so few of the father's paintings seen here. Egmond aan Zee is a village on the North Sea coast in the Dutch province of North Holland. It's known for being very dangerous, and in 1741 there was a disastrous flood that destroyed the entire town. So it's a very precarious location on the North Sea, up in the northern part of the Netherlands. So here's Solomon. The next few pictures I'm going to show you of Solomon von Ruysdael's specializes in river and estuary scenes, sort of at the mouth of the various rivers and the harbors. Solomon's paintings are located in major museums around the world, which you can read about right there. The clump of trees in the center centers the composition and provides a sturdy framework for the animals and humans that you see in the scene. None of these landscapers have that much emphasis on humans, although Jacob, the son, will do it more than certainly his uncle does. He uses the trees to open the sense of space. Not only does the ferry boat pass before them, but wagons loaded with passengers also travel the track behind them. Is a reputation for this beautiful, unblemished interpretations of the countryside around Haarlem. He's mainly from the area and travels around the Haarlem. And as with most painters at that point, these are all done from sketches. There may be some exceptions, but everything I've read about indicates that they do their painting back in their studio or in their house after having done drawings and sketches of the area when they're to sort of get the idea what they want to do. So the low horizon and the discreetly placed figures are typical of Dutch landscape painting in the 1650s, where the landscape atmosphere was more important than activity. I think that's an important point. Despite the gray weather, this is a romantic, rather idealized river landscape by Solomon. The water is still, the fisherman is puttering around in his boat. In here. But that's not the focus of the painting. The dramatic cloud formations are depicted in various gray nuances. Flashes of light break the monotony and indicate that although the sky is a physical phenomenon, it's not, it's a very important feature for the artist to follow. Here's another slightly different one, river scene by Solomon von Ruysdael. Nothing could be more Dutch than boats on a wide river under a cloudy sky. A ferry approaches, and I would assume this is the ferry right here. Your ferry approaches the shore. Rowboats are out for a joyride over here. Sailboats are heading out to sea. So it's a river scene up there on the coast where the father's town was so endangered. This is a gentle waterscape where the water neither challenges nor threatens. It's unusual. A small ferry carries passengers across. Cattle are on this trip across the river. The scene is so peaceful that the brown cow rubs his neck against the side of the boat. I'm not sure you can see that. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay. It captures.
Downwind sail, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, there doesn't seem to be much wind anywhere.
It's behind it.
Yeah.
Downwind
Little,
sail.
yeah. But the rowboat, the ferry boat, I don't know how they're propelling that. It captures the clarity and calm for which Solomon Ruysdael is renowned. Look at the ripples left in the wake of the passing sailboat. So yes, Barbara, there's some wind, but it's pretty light up in
I know,
there.
but you love a downwind sail.
Look the way he captures that.
Well, the flags are straight, so there must be enough wind to keep them straight.
I don't think he worried about that a great deal. I don't think he was that interested in. I mean, we'll see many more sort of windy pictures, and there's a light breeze, and the sail is bowed out a little bit right here, but not much.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Just a minute, Tama. Thank you.
Right.
Wait.
Thank you. This says it's a river, the one we were just looking at.
This one right here,
Yeah.
a wide yeah.
I'm confused. I thought that the whole of the Netherlands had dikes around it to keep the ocean
A
out.
lot of it does. Apparently not, and maybe this is early enough so they hadn't built them, but there are rivers certainly there. But there are we think of it in terms of canals and dikes. I'm going to show you some pictures of dikes.
Well, what keeps the ocean from roaring up those rivers?
Probably not much when you're up on the coast. I mean, it was a very fragile terrain at that point. But they do build dikes, but clearly there's not one visible here.
I
That's all.
saw that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Gail?
What on the sleeve? That ferry boat looks very small, and those horses standing up.
With the cows and the horses. Yeah, and it looks,
Well, the cows aren't in the boat, are they?
yeah,
Oh, they're in it, actually.
Yeah.
They're in the back.
right here.
I mean, how could that be?
Well, I think that again, the artist has taken some
Liberty.
liberties license. I don't think that's an accurate picture in terms of the number of people and the animals on the boat. Okay, let's go on here. Landscape with ferry again, and he calls these boats right here ferries, these little, which they are, but just little, very small boats compared to the size of the number of people on the boat. His painting, okay. The signing of the Treaty of Munster in 1648 gave full autonomy to the Dutch Republic. This is very important. After the war, this independence from Spain, which had controlled this area for hundreds of years, the Dutch set out to explore the areas of this country that they could finally claim as their own. They go to Germany, and they go to northern parts of the Netherlands. Many go east. They go down the Rhine River to see historic cities. Ruysdael may have traveled these, and Solomon as well as his nephew, traveled these routes, but no drawings from his hand survive to document such a journey. This large crenellated castle in the background, right here, and they often throw those in there, is a fanciful construct. It's reminiscent of the fortress-like structures which were along the Rhine. So they're influenced by the travels, especially to Germany and down the Rhine, and then they put these in. This very well is not probably an accurate scene. That's what I think you'll see. Jacob is going to do the same thing. The rivers, again, they make the rivers without dikes, because that would spoil in some cases, the effects of the picture. So that's the picture comes first, the cloud formations, the river, which doesn't have much wind on it, of course. So we got to remember that feature. Halt at an inn. Now here's a landscape, heroic tree motif, which Solomon's nephew Jacob would raise to an outstanding feature, appears prominently in his paintings. The heroic tree. He forms here a dark contrast in the sky against a colorful sunset. The heroic trees against the sunset way over in that area right here. And they remain thin and feathery, the trees. In his early pictures, they function beautifully in the total pictorial effect, which they gain in extraordinary splendor by the colors of the sky, with mother-of-pearl streaks of pink and blue, violet and gray. The air is shiny, and more activities go on than before, both on land and in the water. So here's in front of an inn, and there's again an obligatory spire of a church, which again may or may not be there. Some of these are much more accurate in terms of location than others, but these are not particularly so. Okay, now we get to Jacob. 1629 to 82 is a preeminent landscape artist, and he, of course, builds on his great uncle, on Solomon's portraits as well here. He's very versatile, is one thing we'll see. He paints more specific landscapes, winter, sea, mountains. Not that there are any mountains in Holland at that point, which we can see here, but he's much more versatile. The earliest date that appears on a Ruysdael painting is 1646, when he's about 17. And I'll show you some of these early ones. By that time, landscape paintings were as popular as history paintings were in Dutch households. So it sort of replaces the history, biblical history, more than anything. During the time of Ruysdael's birth, during his early lives, history paintings appear much more frequently. Growth and popularity of landscapes continues through his career. So you're going to see lots of landscapes, lots of high skies. You're going to see windmills. You're going to see waterfalls. This is a characteristic, a more complex use of the landscape than you'll see with Solomon. Landscape with a village in the distance. This ambitious picture is one of 9 known landscape paintings that bear an early date. So in this point, he's maybe about 18 at this point. Drawing from his memory of landscapes, and I made that point already, he's visited, and sketches that he's made. So these are done from sketches. Critics feel his youth and some losses of paint and glazes combine to make the topography in the foreground somewhat unclear. Again, it's not quite as detailed as it will get into later. However, the naturalistic description of foliage and the dramatic presentation of trees forecasts the future of Holland's greatest landscape painter. So this is an early one. This is again one of the classic Van Ruysdael. Again, he's a young man here, but this sort of low landscape and towers, castle, churches in the distance, the picturesque. Note the high skies and the low landscapes, which are so characteristic of Van Ruysdael. He's depicts a wide range of landscape subjects, and he paints remarkable scenes for such a young man. And as I said before, his trip to Germany is very important in that it influenced him. Sometimes he puts in mountains where there are no mountains, but this is all from sketches that he's done. And then he goes back to his house and works on them. He will later on, we'll see city panoramas and seascapes, which are added to his repertoire. And the sky, often pictures like this, takes up 2/3 of the canvas. And in all, he produces hundreds of paintings. Okay, now waterfall. Anybody notice anything about this that's unusual, this painting, this windmill? What's about the windmill? What's it?
It's not the worst for wear.
Well, it's also only got, when I think of windmills, I think of 4, wings. And I don't know why, but most of the windmills you're gonna see have only 3 blades, sheets around them. He's again 17 or 18 inches. Man crossing the bridge. Only 3 sails are depicted. Now again, this is after a sketch of the thing. Maybe he forgot, he left it out. It was too much trouble to put it in. It wouldn't fit with the context of the picture. However, he's substituting. This is a real scene, more of a real scene. He's substituting a church for apparently there was a second windmill here, and this made it more interesting, more varied. So that's where the artist obviously can take poetic license. He shows this man going across a very basic bridge. Yeah, Kathleen.
I think there's a 4th panel over here. I think that's a panel.
Yeah, that's what I
On the
think too.
far
Well, I only.
I think it's from the far
Well, all right.
side.
Well, all right. Maybe if you see another one, okay. We see obviously 2. We'll look at some. You're gonna.
No, they're 4.
There's
You're gonna see.
4. There's 3. There's at least 3.
No, they're And then 4. maybe
I don't see 4.
The 4th on the other
So,
side.
and then that one.
Yeah.
That one.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's look at the other ones and see. I didn't see that as easily. It's hard to know what that is right there. Okay. Oh, there's another one. And you see 4? I see 3. I looked this up a couple of nights ago, and windmills usually have 4 sails. In fact, sometimes they have more, 5 or 6 sometimes, but I thought it was unusual that he only features 3. I mean, maybe there's a 4th that we can't really tell where it would be in here. Shows his development in just a few years. The farm and the windmill are set back, so there's more going on in the foreground of this picture, and it's not the high sky effect in this case. At least isn't as much isn't important in this. Critics write that this shows how much this particular picture, how much young Ruysdael has progressed in just a few years with his filling in of the foreground, making it more of an interesting picture, not just the high skies. Notice various details. And apparently, Johannes, you could comment on this, but there are still 1,000 windmills in Holland, I'm told. There's still a lot of them around.
There's a sort of a guild of volunteer people. There's a large kind of movement to sustain the fact that these things can still work.
They use them.
They also can rotate to catch the wind.
Yeah, so they're not just for show.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. So he'll include obviously all sorts of different features like this, not just windmills, but there were many more probably back in the 17th century, and yet this is something that continues today. This is the great oak, again, landscape picture, but there's more going on in the foreground. It's an unusual landscape. He loves painting trees, especially oaks. People are second, and in this case, the suggestion is they may have been painted by his assistants. He wasn't as interested in this. I really know the provenance of this, but he doesn't just do landscapes. This is Meeting at the Fork is another alternate title for this. The two streams of people coming from this side and this side of the tree. The tree is obviously the center point of the picture, although it's hard.
The pictures look very dark.
The peop-
And I'm wondering, is it because of old age? I mean, they get darker with time. I don't know what happens to the paint.
The foreground you're talking
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there are certain lit areas, but others are so dark that you can barely make out any.
I can't, and the trees seem a little darker than, maybe it's just the picture that I found.
I have a question.
And this to Rick.
It seems that this might answer your question, but in most landscapes that I've seen, not only the Dutch landscape, but in Turner and even American artists, there's always clouds in the landscape. Of course, clouds darken the land, but overall, my question is, why do you have to put clouds in? Has anybody ever heard of a nice clear sky?
They like the contrast, well, they like the contrast with the trees, everything, obviously. Okay,
Maybe Barbara can answer.
Well,
Okay.
It makes for a much more interesting painting
yeah, that's, yeah.
than just a plain blue sky. And they're very interested in depicting the clouds. Look at the difference in all of them.
Yeah, yeah.
It's much more of a painting when
And
the
you-
clouds in it than just a blue sky,
So they had the clouds.
if you want that.
And I can't really answer your question about the darker, why they're so dark, and maybe it's just a slide, although I thought this was a pretty good one. Dallas?
The painter wants to show the mastery of building clouds
Of course.
too, I think.
that's
Yeah.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Daryl, there's another microphone we have here too.
The paintings would look, there would be more detail on the painting if we darkened the room. We would see a lot more.
Oh, thank you.
Because there's a kind of film, a cloudy film over the whole surface of the screen, as you can see when you look down at the bottom.
Can't see.
So that's one thing. And the other thing is that these paintings were made on a dark ground. The painters at this time started on a ground that was sort of a medium brown and worked up and forward and back on the surface of the canvas. I don't know if you look up the top of the blue sky, it looks a little bit blotchy, and that's because over time the painting becomes transparent or it gets worn away by cleaning or other things. So you can see a little bit of that brown ground coming through.
So we're saying that what we're seeing here is affected by not only where we're sitting, but also the age of the painting, and it wouldn't be as
That was
dark.
a technique.
The brown ground makes the whole look of the painting slightly darker than it would be if it were painted on white.
Yeah, okay, good.
Maybe Daryl can sit there and Harry can sit there.
Okay, here are two contrasting paintings of landscapes. And the one on the right, I'm afraid, is Solomon. That does suffer by comparison to the one by his nephew Jacob on the left here. But he combines in this left one the contrasting motifs of life and death into one complete painting. This one right here. And I'm just showing the Solomon. I don't have much to say about that. But this one where you've got all sorts of things going on. The aspects of death can be seen within the ruins and the overrun walls that are dispersed throughout the scene. However, the lushness of the trees and brush, combined with the constant flow of the water, the stream, and the hints of a couple up in here, and people right there, sitting way up there. It's a strange situation with tiny people compared to the perspective of the rest of the picture. It alludes to the motif of life and is still vibrant and growing within the landscape. It's a perspective. Solomon's picture, the only thing over here I would notice about it is that he puts in mountains. Way over here is a slightly awkward placing of the mountain high above the trees on the right is a clue that the picture isn't probably Jacob on Ruysdael's. We don't know. It's probably by Solomon, but that's an unusual feature there. 2 water mills, open sluice here. You've got to look at everything. Then we got 2 sluices right here. 2 water mills on either side of the stream. They're ubiquitous in 17th century Holland, and they remain a symbol of the Dutch landscape. The mill to the left is partly cut off by the frame and hidden by an oak tree right here. There is another one right. That's the oak tree sort of cutting it off here. On the right, with an open sluice gate in the center, a man stands on a footbridge above, raising the gate. You can see the man here again. This is maybe next time I'll pull the shades down. It'll be easier to see these things. But there it is. And on the left bank are the reeds. On the right foreground is a tree trunk in the water, right here. A flight of steps goes up the right bank to a path up the hill, on the top of which, in the right distance, are a village church and windmill amid the trees up in here. So it's a lot going on in here, plus the sky, which, as has been said, makes it a much more dramatic picture than it would be otherwise. And he can put these things in any way he wants when he's actually sitting indoors looking at his sketches. All right, here's another Jacob on Ruysdael cottage in a hayrick by a river. The wind is, blowing a little more, although the fan is out there poling his boat. Probably made this when he was around 20, the time that he qualified as an artist and joined the Painters Guild in his hometown of Haarlem. It's built on the composition around the stand of scrubby trees and a farmhouse. Trees and a farmhouse on the edge of the river. It made it all the more artistically challenging by choosing a backlit scene. While this increases the visual impact of the trees against a bright sky, it requires him to evolve the effects of light filtering through them right here. It's in a different sky. Okay. Again, a very more classic landscape scene here. Extensive landscape with grain fields on either sides. These dirt roads, you can see people are walking. There's a single figure right here. Let's see if I can find it. Right there. He depicts fields on both sides of the road here, on the hills, on the edge of the woods, near the seashore, or near the still waters of ponds. There's the ocean way back in the distance, but again, a very low land right there, back in there. The fields are of ripe wheat, bathed in warm light. Frequently, as we see here, figures walking along paths or resting on the edges. The towers of Hempstead Castle are in the distance, right here. Another famous popular landscape, rough trough grain fields near Zuiderzee, which is a large inland bay in northwest Holland. The theme of the overwhelming sky, and a distant town, in this case the birthplace of his father. Further into the pictorial space is a village set among trees whose tops break the horizon line. And here, the particular location depicted in the work has not been identified, but it's thought to be close to Naarden, with the Zuiderzee in the background, this inland bay right in there. And he depicts the fields on either side of the road. You can see people walking along in here. Landscape of the ruined castle, the village church. A much is conveyed through the towering clouds. I mean, so he loves to play with clouds, doesn't he? He's just so dramatic, in many of his pictures at least. The slanting sun lights up patches of the fields below, like right over in here. Maybe a storm has just passed, but it's going across this way. We've got towers and castle towers visible further in the background. This is one of his most famous landscapes. Within the scene are the ruin of a farmhouse, a church that leads around the painting. His naturalistic use of color inspires many that come after him, including the 18th century, 19th century British artists. It's dominated by clouds, horizon lines of land, diagonal clouds, and vertical castle and church. So here's the ruined castle, and here, the town, you can see there's a person over in the side, right here. There's swans down in the lake. It's landscapes, but with more things in the foreground than he did when he was much younger. Wheat fields. This painting is one of 27, apparently, works that he produced concerning fields of grain. Look at the clouds again. Notice the man with a traveler's pack walking along the road. His work depicts this road passing between these two fields of wheat. Beyond the fields, a small woods and a house can be seen. And here, note the detail in the far left-hand corner is the coastline and several ships. Again, I mean, you may not be able to see it as visually, but they're over in here, can be made out. Okay, here's the windmill. I'm sorry, Johannes isn't here to pronounce that for us, but that's the windmill. And you see 3 sails on that? I only see 3. Am I missing one here? I don't know why there would be only 3, and at least apparent, but
It's the one on the left, the top building. You can't see it because, you can't see that because the body of that windmill is hiding that.
I think so.
no, okay. I
But
mean,
it would be coming right down, but it would be where the body on the right is.
of the tower, the
Yeah.
windmill tower, yeah. Well, who knows? I mean, it's funny though that most of his paintings that we've seen at least today only have 3. That's what Rick.
Yeah, Harry, I still have my head in the clouds, and I suspect that that the painter painted the clouds before he painted the landscape, and that the clouds even are translated from either his conception of what clouds there might have been on that day, or from another painting,
Yeah,
or from a sketch. Are there any sketches?
I'm sure. Yeah, there are.
Well,
Yeah, of this particular painting.
of any.
Yeah, he does lots of sketches. They've done that. Made of that. The clouds first. Daryl, does that seem
You don't
logical?
want just a blue sky anymore.
I don't.
My head's in the clouds.
Got over that.
Holland has lots of clouds.
Yeah.
Well said.
Now let me ask you one more question about this painting. There are 15 people in this painting.
Oh.
15. You probably can't see them again because the room isn't dark enough. But there are 3 here, right there, and then there are apparently, I counted this when I saw the picture up close, 4 on the boat, 7, and then there are 3 right here, and then various other approaching figures right here. So that's 6. What do I got? 3, 4, 7, 3 is 10, 13. There's another one in there somewhere. But it's interesting how he's put in these figures. I'm not quite sure why, but to show how that it's an active, fairly busy area when all you can see really are the clouds and the sail. You can see these 3 people right here. Maybe that's about it. Yeah.
The water is so beautifully painting, it's so interesting, the reflections and the little waves on the water.
Yeah, okay. Anything else? Daryl? Rick, give Daryl the microphone.
Tell her you're gonna talk.
I was. I agree that the painters are doing the sky first, because on the earlier paintings, we would see these beautiful trees, and you can see the sky beyond, through the trees. And think how hard it would have been to go in there and make the little teeny tiny places where you could see through the trees. But it would be much easier to put all the sky and then put
Yeah.
the tree over it.
To put this, I mean, it's only about 1/3 of the whole painting is not sky. I mean, that's the thing. Daryl?
One of the things about these paintings is that they were made for a bourgeois audience who had the money to spend on landscapes instead of portraits or religious paintings. And they were patrons who liked detail. And in looking at these paintings in a museum, one of the pleasures of getting up close and seeing all the things that are in the painting.
Which we can do, which we can't do, is obviously here. And, okay, thank you. Remember, Dutch windmills are a factory. I mean, they grind wheat and flour, and they're a very important part of the economy of Holland at that point. Kathleen?
Back to the people a minute. There is a small boat to the right of the big one. Go over there. There's a person in that.
Okay.
And then there's another sailboat behind that, behind the big,
Yeah.
There's some people in there.
Okay, well, anyway, it adds up to 15. That's, I found 15. Okay. Okay, and this is a famous painting too, very different, where the clouds are wild in this particular painting. It shows the ruins of a church and a convent, focusing on the Jewish cemetery in the foreground. Tombs of the Portuguese Jewish community of Amsterdam. And it's everything, all sorts of things are going on here. It's sort of an allegory of the fragility of life. The three people in black are seen walking towards the tombs on the side of the hill. In here. Am I seeing, am I pointing right? Yeah.
Head northwest a little bit.
In black.
There.
Oh, there they are.
But that's not black.
But go to the left of the stones. Go west of the stones. West. Go west.
Okay, good. They're in black, walking towards the tombs on the side of the hill. All sorts of images of death and destruction are implied through this ruins of the castle. The rainbow is sort of an enduring sign of hope, which suggests the picture may imply the promise of an afterlife, new foliage growing on the trees, symbolizing nature's capacity for growth and regeneration. There's some speculation that Van Ruysdael was Jewish. However, he was baptized in the Reformed Church after being brought up as a Mennonite. So this is just a painting probably done for a wealthy client, in this case, maybe who was Jewish, I guess, speculation. Okay, now more water scenes, seascapes, stormy seas, sailing vessels, and galleots sailing on an estuary. This is the estuary over in here, where water is much calmer. This is actually in the surrounding sea, the North Sea. It could be out there. The dramatic sky and seascapes are particularly important in seascapes. This is a time when the artists began to depict marine themes, exactly when it's been a subject of debate. Van Ruysdael began to produce such works in the 1660s.
Can I put this up here?
Yeah, let's see. Maybe it's going to, maybe you better put it on the other table. Well, I think you better put it on the other table.
Maybe over here.
Slide it over more. Different windmills.
Is that too high?
There,
No.
Well, look at all the different windmills, yeah.
That's nice.
Most of them are four sails. In fact, I don't see any that are less than four, but the ones we were seeing, the fourth sail just wasn't as visible. Well, we'll look at this as soon as I'm through here. He begins to produce works like this in the 1660s, coinciding with his move to Amsterdam. The galleot over on the right is a small galley boat propelled by sails or oars right here. One of these, this is a small, right here, and here they are out. It shows how rough it can be out in here and with the rocks so close. And there were different galleots were used in different parts of the coast, depending on the wind and on the roughness of the seas. More seas off. Here's the closest thing to a breakwater right here, which looks like it needs to be repaired quite frequently. The winds are rough, it's rough banging on the shore here. It's a dike lined with piles, beyond which is a fisherman's cottage with a few trees. Over in here. On the far left corner, great waves are breaking, or more out in there. Further back, the masts of several larger vessels, as well as the stern with a Dutch flag. There's a Dutch flag right there. In the 19th century, Vincent van Gogh called this painting by Van Ruysdael magnificent. He loved this for some reason. It appealed to Van Gogh, especially, more than many of his other works. So it can certainly get rough, as you can see by the seas right here. Here's a landscape of a ruined castle and a church. We've seen this. Yeah. Chapel by a waterfall. And this is inspired by another artist of the day. He paints many different waterfall settings. This scene is depicted from a low viewpoint. Down here, you're down at this point looking up, calm and solid against the wilderness of nature. Trees with twisted roots survive precariously on rocky outcroppings. The broken trees in the foreground are important not only as compositional devices, but as symbolic reminders of the transience of life and the inevitability of death. This shows a chapel viewed from a low point, looking up at the chapel up here. The somber mood is reinforced by ominous clouds and by dark green, the grass and foliage. I don't see any figures in this picture. Hilly landscape with a fisherman and a waterfall. Okay, we can, yeah, the fishermen are not as noticeable here, but here's one. Notice how the landscapes are getting now more complicated. One of his river landscapes, on his river landscapes, people are more prominent. He gets everything in here. A fisherman, mountains, castle in the distance, clouds. I mean, this has got almost everything. The mountains are even back in here, which is not characteristic of Holland. Another landscape. This is not on display anywhere that I was able to find. In this scene, a waterfall transforms the gentle flow of a small river into a turbulent stream that rushes towards a wooden bridge. Right here. Here's a bridge. Somebody's crossing the bridge. A mother and child with their dog crosses the bridge towards a path into a densely forested terrain right here. 3 large oak trees, one dead, one withering, and one sturdy, dominate the center of the composition. 3 different types of trees right there. The juxtaposition of the dead and broken trees with a fast-flowing stream in a rocky landscape is likely an allegorical reference to the transience of life. Ruysdael often composed his scenes so as to limit the viewer's easy access to the landscape, therefore increasing the tension in this. And we can't see, again, as we just can't see all the details in this particular picture as easily as you would be able to in a museum. or if you were closer. Okay, this is a different landscape here. Cattle and sheep watering at a pool in the dunes, and raising cattle and herders resting. I guess the herders are over in here. You can certainly see the cattle. Unlike the Italian and French landscape painters, Ruysdael followed the practice of Dutch masters in always painting the real inhabitants of a particular landscape. For him, the countryside was a setting for human beings, not mythical heroes. The farmsteads nestling among the trees house Dutch peasants, not described as Greek deities, but shepherds who are seen minding their sheep. That's, I think, an important point. View of Haarlem with bleaching grounds right here in the foreground, the city of Haarlem in the background. These bleaching fields are an integral part of textile manufacturing during the early stages of the Industrial Revolution. The sun shines on the houses and part of the bleaching grounds, but a shadow of a passing cloud lies on the edge of them. The shadow you can see right over here. The sun shines on it, but not as much in there. There's also a patch of light in the middle distance, in the right middle distance, way back in there. Behind is a farm hidden amid the trees. At the back are roofs and church towers of Haarlem, partly illuminated by sunlight. The clouds are high in the sky. An open area is used for spreading the cloth on the ground to be purified and whitened by the action of the sunlight. So there's certainly high clouds here. And here's a view of Amsterdam, view from the scaffolding surrounding the tower of the town hall. And Ruysdael has climbed to the top of this tower, as much as it was at that point, giving us a vivid view of this city of 200,000. At that time, Europe's most busiest port. So from 1656 until he dies in 82, he works in Amsterdam. And this is the period when he painted this picture. All sorts of views of the standing road meandering on the water's edge, a rosy church spire, the tower of the Zitterkerk rising high above the city right here, the church spire, the ships in the harbor. It's a totally different, you still have the landscape, the high sky, but he gets fascinated by what he's seen around in Amsterdam, as this next picture also shows. The Dam Square in Amsterdam. It's not a landscape or a seascape, place with which friend Ruysdael was familiar as he lived on the south side of the square. In the foreground of the painting, we see a large number of figures. Who thought that Ruysdael did not paint these, as I've suggested before, as he was not a particularly good figure specialist. That's, again, a theory that art historians have worked out, thought at least. Wooded river landscape with a traveler and his dog, and landscape with traveler with swans in a pond right here. So he's still doing, well, this is earlier than the 1650s, he's still doing landscapes, but again, they're much more complex, they're much more detailed in the trees and the skies than they had been 20 years before. And yet he's still putting in the figures right here, traveler and his dog, swans over here, if you can see them right there. More complex landscapes. Landscape with bridge, cattle, and figures at the Clark Institute. This is another more complex one, the windswept countryside, and his painting looks entirely natural. Clouds float high in the sky, casting shadows over trees, rocky crags, and a river over which people and animals make a somewhat hazardous journey across here. Can you imagine taking sheep across this bridge, whatever, there? The dead tree and the unstable bridge are intended to remind us of the passage of time and the unpredictability of life, which appears in many of his pictures we talked about. This is more of an action picture than most of his paintings. Somebody got a phone on? He was at his best doing the trees, particularly the figures here. These are wonderful pictures of trees. The figures are sparingly included, sometimes painted by others. As I've said here, this is a shooting of a stag by this man right here, but this is, again, it's hard to see it that clearly, but the painting is dominated by the figures shooting at the stag who's jumping into the water. And a few winter pictures dominated by ominous dark clouds and lit from the left by the setting sun way over here in the corner. We'll end with some winter scenes. He paints around about 25 winter landscapes. The warmly dressed figures on the ice seem insignificant in the face of this inclement weather. A cheerful crowd of skaters would have been out of place in such a wintry landscape. I mean, that's pretty grim, which I'm sure it was like all over Europe at that point. More winter landscapes. And you can see on the right, his landscapes depict the fields and forests of the Dutch countryside under the effects of snow, as well affected as we'll see in some frozen canals. On these occasions, these scenes include large windmills up in here. How many sails do we see on that?
Four in each.
You see four? Okay. And shapes outlined against the heavy winter sky. Winter landscapes depicting the effects of the season set in the countryside or in cities or in their outskirts have been depicted by artists for generations. And it seemed Van Ruysdael starts to paint these scenes after he's moved to Amsterdam. More scenes like this. Winter landscape in Heckveld Square, 1665. The contrast of light in the natural environment in Amsterdam. Two frozen canals which meet which now have been filled in apparently in the 19th century. The distance can be discerned by the tower of the new town hall. I guess I'm not sure which is the new town hall. Back here. Okay, it makes it highly likely that the painting was made after 1665 or later. It shows that the town hall was not finished until then. Back in there, I guess.
No, I think it's keep on going to the right.
Right here?
Go over to the left a little bit. There's one with that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Thank you. Good. With another winter landscape, the effects of the season are set in the countryside on the outskirts of cities. It's already been depicted by artists for generations. Van Ruysdael's winter landscapes depict the fields and forests of the countryside under the effects of snow, as well as in the cities. The frozen canals, and all showing how grim this obviously was at that particular time. And we'll end with a final landscape. With his passion for nature, Ruysdael paints a great deal of attention to the details of his paintings. The red roof around the church indicates they belong to the wealthier residents of the town. So what else can you see? You can see the windmills, you can see the sheep in here, and other landscapes portraying the same view, which looks a little bit the same, but the clouds are different in this case, obviously. Many believe that the church in the center is St. Agatha at Beverwyck, 7 miles north of Haarlem, where he lives and spends most of his life. Okay. Let me see, now last time I couldn't show you this, and I wanted to show you this to see if we could, if you remember this from last time, I wanted to see if I can get this to work. It's very short. No, damn. Well, I think I'm not gonna try to go any further. Okay, well, we've seen the seascapes. Okay, well, that's all. Thank you.
That's very good.
Any final questions?
About,
So,
do we want to ask
I was gonna say,
Klaus about the windmills?
Ed, could you put the screen up and then I'll move the windmills over in the middle so Johannes can tell us about them.
We have to get out a report for our vaccinations.
Yeah, anybody has to go for vaccinations?
We'll go out this way.
Okay, go ahead. Can we pull the screen up?
Tell me what's with your phone here.
I'm trying to figure it out. I'm afraid that
It doesn't go off.
I'm afraid that it's supposed to go directly into my ear.
Where's Johannes? Oh, you want to say something about this?
Yeah, just give me a call. Thanks a lot.
I know so little about technology.
I have to go up.
That's fine, yeah.
Give Johannes a win.
The names under here are names of the nearby towns. They're not to scale.
It's great.
And the house there
Hold it up to your mouth.
in the middle at the top, Zondijk, it's called, that's very much, if you go from Amsterdam to the beach, you pass that house. It's very nice. And these, they also show some of the work that windmills do. They can be, and this is Leiden, so this is Leiden, and that's, they have really good cheese there. And these, for most of these, they can rotate around the base to catch the wind wherever it's coming from. So I'll give you some Dutch names. Purmerend, Zaanse Schans, Gronsveld. And you can see these things here that help to rotate the windmills. And all of them are now maintained by ordinary sort of people who have become the caretakers. For all of these are still here as far as I know. None of them have.
And are they used for industrial purposes, some of them?
Some of them are sawmills.
Yeah.
This is a large one with the mill keeper, that's his house, or the family's house. The structure, and they're not all the same. They're sort of have different groups that do different things. Nothing is to scale. Here you can drive a car through here, or a truck. Any questions?
Okay, well, thank you for bringing that
Thank you,
over.
Joe.
Okay.
Nou is het mijn beurt om een beetje het Nederlands te spreken. So now it's my turn to speak to you in Dutch. And Dutch is not so much a language as a throat disease.
As a what?
It's not so much a language as a throat disease.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay, good.